Hello again. I'm going. Hello again. This is the second video in my series for assisting in the character development of pirate personas. In this video, I will be focusing on what I like to call gentleman jacks, which are the more gentlemanly type pirates. Um, I will be going over behavior, likely background, infamous deeds, aliases, fitting ships, males versus females, wants and needs, and then aspects which are unique to the Gentleman Jack, which include a code of honor, portraying the gentleman, and courtly habits. Um, for courtly habits, what I mean by that is basically habits of a gentleman had they come from the royal courts of Europe, which is a possibility for a character background. Excuse me. I'm going to start with behavior. Behavior is pretty simple. For the gentleman jack, it's basically very honorable, very chivalrous, very noble and respectful of the innocent. Gentleman Jack is the type of pirate who is probably going to be doing, I mean, is sort of a pirate who would be very, very posh, very couth. They would, of course, they're pirates and they're going to have a little bit of roguish charm, but they're going to be sort of, but even to ships they would board. Their introduction to an enemy ship, even if they boarded it, is going to be to bow to the merchant captain, apologize for having to pillage their ship, and explaining that that's what they do for a living, and then sending their men to take the plunder out of the hold and get it back onto their own ship. They're also going to be probably defending women and children and but at the same time you can be very ruthless with the gentleman jack at the same time. For example, Black Bart, I would consider a gentleman jack. He dressed in fine clothing. He was supposed to have worn red brocade at his last battle, and he held church on his ships and was a teetotaler. But at the same time, this is the same man that was well known for exacting revenge on his enemies, and in one notable incident, even took the governor of Martinique and hung him from the yardarm of his own ship. Um, so you can very easily pull off a gentleman persona, being very honorable and chivalrous, while at the same time essentially being very ruthless to your enemies, like I do. But at the same time, next I want to go over likely background. The most obvious thing to do for a gentleman type pirate is a background which comes from the upper classes, such as the nobility or the gentry, but for some reason things didn't work out for them in their favor in their youth, and that's how they became a pirate. For Greyhound, what I do is he ran afoul of a rival noble family, and they had him kidnapped and sold into slavery, and he escaped and turned pirate. Maybe you could do another practice, which happened to the historical pirate Michel. His name was Philibert de Gramont, and he was called the Chevalier de Gramont. He was a buccaneer in the 17th century. He was believed to have been a nobleman's son who was sent into exile by the king because he fought a duel with one of his sister's suitors. So you could go the route of a disgraced nobleman. You can even go so far as to say that perhaps you were adventuresome in your youth and you were seeking adventures, and one of your adventures got you into a little more trouble, and so you fled the country, or maybe you wanted to go wandering out at sea and look at the ships and were press ganged because no one recognized you as a high and mighty noble's son who usually stays in his father's castle. You could do the same thing for a girl, for a woman. A woman, but for a woman, you obviously have another option, which is you didn't want to be have an arranged marriage to a to some prince or duke or count or something, and for that reason you chose to be a pirate, to live free and on your own terms. Um, um, the next thing is infamous deeds. A gentleman jack um, is probably going to be well known for gentlemanly behavior, of course. Black Sam Bellamy was called the Prince of Pirates because he was known to have shown compassion and even kindness to prisoners that he plundered, and his men fashioned themselves after Robin Hood's men. So your practices are probably going to be more like board a ship, warn it that yes, we're pirates, we're gonna plunder it, but as long as you don't fight back, no harm will come to you. You fight back, well, fine, we'll just defeat you, take what we want, and leave. Or they're going to surrender, or you're going to take what you want, be very kind, and say, well, sorry, we had to do this, but this is just our job. Take what you want and sail away without any harm. You may even help them into the next port, or if their ship is leaking, bring them on board and help them into their own port. You may also be well known for defending the innocent against tyrannical the king's men, to the point where you were sort of somewhat of a freedom fighter. For an alias, aliases for this are probably going to be along the line, incorporate words like gentleman, fancy, dandy, noble, things like that. Fitting ships for a gentleman jack probably include, they're just any ships you can come across. I was given very sound advice by a friend of mine to use a ship that matches my persona, that's very fitting of my character, and my character is a big, fancy, noble pirate captain who's all about the elegance and grandeur of being a pirate. He's in it for the glory. So for that reason, I gave him a ship-of-the-line class galleon with 80-odd cannon. It's very fancy, very lavishly decorated with gold statuary and carvings, but at the same time can turn deadly in an instant. So use a ship that fits your captain. If he's well known for his speed and swordplay, use something small and trim like a sloop or something. Males versus females. A male gentleman jack is probably going to be it's the same level of courtly and gentleman habits. It's just that society had different rules for men and women. In Europe, which is what I'm referring to mostly, it was a patriarchal society, so women were usually took a secondary role and were given, and everyone, even if you were a man or a woman, had arranged marriages to advance your family's fortune or position. So you may have become a pirate because you didn't want to marry the person you married, or perhaps a woman had to fend for herself, and since she was young and decided to seek her fortune on the sea. It's all sorts of things you could consider. Wants and needs. First of all, you're going to want to be very chivalrous for whatever reason. You have to establish what that reason is. Perhaps you came from a lower class and you saw how well the nobles lived, and you thought to yourself, well, maybe I could mimic that, and I could, and I'll look even better, and I'll have this better image, or um, just at the same time, maybe you're a rebel without a cause, or a rebel with a cause, and that cause is over, so you're continuing fighting. You could be sort of like Robin Hood or the Knights of the Round Table, and fashion yourself after them and sort of do things like that. The next feature of a Gentleman Jack it's a unique feature, is a code of honor. Gentlemen have code of honor, whether they are the classical code of chivalry. You could have gone to Japan and at some point on an East Indiaman and learned about Bushido from a samurai who you made friends with, or something like that. But if you're going to be a gentleman pirate, you're going to have a code of honor, and I can guarantee one of the things on there is going to be don't harm the innocent, don't harm women and children, because those are the classical things that make up a gentleman. You can go as far or in depth as you want to go to it. I mean, you could even get a piece of parchment and write out your code of honor and use it as a prop. For a character story, you could even be coming down from a long line of Crusader knights, and for that reason, you follow the old code of chivalry. Then there's portraying the gentleman. When you portray a gentleman or a gentlewoman, you're going to want fine clothing in trying to emulate the upper classes. You could be as foppish as Captain Hook, or you could have sort of your own style, but is still somewhat upper class. Like, for example, from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, Barbossa or Captain Teague, or Captain Red from Roman Polanski's Pirates. You could, and in portraying the gentleman, you're going to want to observe some courtly rituals like bowing to people, like doffing the cap and sweeping it around, and portraying the gentleman, you could also learn, take another step and do a little bit of studying of classical fencing and swordsmanship. But at the same time, an issue with that is it's time consuming, and there's the historical aspects of it, which is only the upper class would actually have access to learning fencing, because it is in fact a very it was an art form, and you had to learn in art forms, and the lower class wouldn't have learned it. Courtly habits. There's an entire website I'm fond of for researching courtly manners and things like that. If you were a gentleman Jack and you came from a lower family, you were merely sort of emulating what the others were doing without actually being exactly like them. You were trying to ape them as best you could, but you didn't have manner lessons and things like that. The website is www.kipar.org, KIPAR. Nicole Kipar's website is a great reference for fashion and period history from the 17th until the early 18th century, which is the time period that I'm referring to. That covers just about everything. Thanks for your time, and if you have any questions about Gentleman Jacks, please post a video below, post a comment, and I'll try to get to your questions. Thanks. Have a nice day.